We're learning about lakes and the nutrients in lakes. If I say the word nutrients in lakes, what do you think I'm talking about? And if you notice, this is probably a perfect graphic that shows you the buildup of nutrients. What kind of nutrients build up in lakes that leads to this green algae? So that's algae. What nutrients would algae thrive from? That is true, because plants need carbon. But what nutrients? Carbon is in the atmosphere and gets absorbed into the ocean. What nutrients enter the lake? Phosphorus, phosphates, nitrates. Good. They come from a runoff of nutrients and any kind of organic matter, because we're talking about organic compounds found in, where do my nitrates and phosphates come from? What's in the soil? Why does the soil have nitrates and phosphates? Do you remember this? I'm reviewing something you've already learned. When I ask you those questions, it's things you've already learned. Yes, fertilizer. Okay, good. So this is a process that's supposed to happen naturally. Lakes transition from this perfectly blue, green, what they're supposed to be, to this, well, blue to this green, and I'm going to explain it, okay? So we're going to think of O for outstanding. So oligotrophic, outstanding lake, which, what does it look like? Clear and blue, and the nutrient levels are low and the sediment buildup is low. Well, why is it outstanding? Because excess nutrient buildup in a lake shouldn't be there. So the nutrient buildup leads to a bloom of algae that also shouldn't be there. Remember algae, when I taught you that before, algae blooms is what we call the amensalism relationship. Algae is causing harm to the body of water without getting anything from it. It's not even supposed to be there, right? So it's almost like an invasive, it's really not, but it's not supposed to be building up there, okay? So you go from oligotrophic to mesotrophic, because anything that happens on land is going to end up in the water. So you're going to have greenish water resulting from algae, and then you're going to have what? Think of meso for M for medium. It's in between. Maybe because there's a new version. All right, eutrophic, I'm just going to push through, okay? Eutrophic, what does the water look like? Green. Green, murky water, because now we have an algae bloom, and I'm going to talk about that later, which is a high nutrient and sediment buildup. Now, I want you to keep in mind, I know you have to go back there. This process is natural, but there are there's human actions that are accelerating the process, okay? And I'm going to talk about, that's what I'm going to end with today. Yep, going back. So from here until the end of the year, it's a lot about problems, right? So we're problems in the marine biome, then we're going to stick to problems with accessing and usage of fresh water, then problems with land, problems with air, all of that. So problems to any aquatic biome, the main problem is overfishing. The fact that we have depleted we've depleted many fish resources from every body of water. This used to be the number one food source for anybody in life, and now it's literally the most expensive of the food sources, which, unless if we do other things, which I'll talk about tomorrow. These are reasons for overfishing. We have specialized technology in order to fish, and there's an industry made out of it for all types of fish. We also do this, which is called bottom trawling. They are literally dragging nets across the bottom of the ocean. What do we call the bottom of the ocean? Who remembers? The benthic zone. And if you look at this video, while they drag these nets, obviously to capture fish, they're destroying the floor of the ocean. Now, where are we if we're bottom trawling? Look, don't look there, look here. Where are we? That's a good answer, but if you're in the open sea, the floor dropped. So it's you can't trawl there. Where are we? We're where? We could be in the coral reef, we could be in the coastal zone, we're near the shore. We're in the coastal zone. Now, you can trawl in the open sea, but you're not bottom trawling. You're just trawling. Like, that's when you throw, right? Bottom trawling is destroy the ocean floor and see what you get. And when that happens, I'm going to jump right here. This happens, which is what? What is this describing? Catching by accident. Happens all the time, like in the movie Nemo, right? They caught him by accident. This is another thing that we're doing that is a big topic, is whaling. I know there's a video I'm not even going to show you because it's too sad. It's supposed to be for research. Okay, I'll show you after. We'll look down. All right, so I'm going to say this in the video, very important. I would be moving to the center of the room. If you see this word pollution, I mean, you cannot use the word pollution on your test for the short answer. You have to describe. And I love stopping right here and asking you, who can describe pollution in this slide? See if you can answer that. I'm not pausing. I want an answer. Describe pollution. And I could give you, in your test, there's going to be a visual, maybe 2 or 3, and I'm going to ask you questions based on the visual. Can anybody describe pollution of, how is this slide representing pollution? Keep going. Okay, good. Now, were any of you thinking the plastic in the ocean is pollution? So, and that's usually the answer I get first, and he went a step further. Plastic in the ocean is waste. When waste breaks apart and causes harm to an organism, it's pollution. Pollution, by definition, is the excess of anything that organism takes in that causes harm. And in this case, the breaking up of plastic can lead to little particles of microplastics that can be ingested and cause harm. Same thing here. I'm just jumping. What's the pollution here? Oil. Oil is causing harm to the bird because it's coating the bird's feathers, preventing it from being able to take flight, right? Or struggling. I mean, it really looks like it's struggling. In this case, it would be a net, right? Okay. But whenever we talk about pollution, we're going to talk about 2 types. Anybody know the difference between point and non-point? Or can guess? Perfect. Direct versus indirect. Now, I said earlier, any action on land can end up in a body of water. How? Runoff. You're on point, girl. So, whenever you see the word runoff, it's non-point. But here's what the type of question I'm going to ask you. What type of runoff would most likely occur from a cropland? Or what type of pollution can, yes, pesticides is a good answer. Fertilizer, which contains heavy levels of nitrates and phosphates, can lead to an algae bloom in the body of water. Yes. What type of pollution or what type of runoff can be directly related to a cropland? Or I can ask you, which one of these areas would most likely lead to heavy levels of nitrates and phosphates in a body of water? Right? No, runoff is indirect. So all of this is non-point. Now, what about animal feedlots? Tell me, what do you think comes from animal feedlots? What are these animals going to do a lot of? Eat and go to the bathroom. Excrete waste. And that waste is considered what? What kind of waste? Organic matter. Organic matter, which I taught you when I came. I'm going to go back to the slide to show you that we already talked about this. Runoff of nutrients and organic matter both end up causing eutrophication, okay? Because they're filled with organic compounds like nitrates and phosphates. As a matter of fact, cows' waste can be fertilizer. So it is a good form of fertilizer. The problem is when you have an animal feedlot or a rangeland, you have a lot of cows and a lot of waste being released. And then if you think of urban, it could be anything. Your tires, garbage inappropriately dumped. When you clean your pool, a chemical leaking into the soil, which can end up, all of that, okay? So industrial or urban or suburban is highly, like the most pollution comes from there. These are specific types of pollution, okay? All right, last thing we're going to talk about is this, cultural eutrophication. So I talked to you about eutrophication and being a natural process. When it's cultural eutrophication, it's human cause humans leading to an increase of this process. Like, can you imagine? Let's go to the beach, family. And then we get there and this is what the beach looks like. And then we say, we're going to go swimming anyway. Let's figure out why this happens. So this step-by-step process, you have to know every single step. And I'm going to say this because one time the AP exam had like between 15 and 25 questions on this. Like insane. They were obsessed with eutrophication. So how does it start? Fill in the blanks. Excess fertilizer used in farming, which contains what? Nitrates and phosphates. How does it get into the soil? Runoff or look at the diagram. Leaching. Now, leaching, who's heard of that word? Okay. So what goes into the soil that we learned? We learned that water infiltrates into the soil, right? When water takes chemicals with it, it's called leaching. Water also runs off, but so do chemicals with water run off. And they end up where? In the ocean or lake, always. Even if you infiltrate or leach, if you run off on the surface, both ends up in large bodies of water. I know you're not done. We're just going to move on, finish the diagram, and then I'll go back so you can fill it in, okay? So what are these nutrients again? What's the chemical formula for a nitrate? Good job. They lead to algae blooms, as we said before. And this is basically, by definition, an algae bloom is overpopulation of algae. Algae is AKA phytoplankton, which is the #1 producer of oxygen in the world, okay? Or producer in the world. I'm moving on. This is what happens when algae blooms. Look at the diagram. What's happening? Sunlight is blocked. If sunlight is blocked, what is it going to reduce? Photosynthesis, which is super high in a coastal zone. It's where most primary productivity occurs. Our most productive biomes or areas in a marine biome are coral reefs, estuaries, coastal zones in general, and in a lake, it would be the littoral zone where sunlight penetrates, right? If sunlight's blocked, it's going to reduce photosynthesis, which means it's going to reduce oxygen levels in the body of water. Now, I want you to listen. On the test, I'm going to say, besides sunlight being blocked, what is another thing that can occur? Because I'm not asking you about this. I'm going to gift this part. And this is what you have to know. Okay? #1, if you have overpopulation of algae, what does that mean by definition? Too much algae? Not enough resources. The definition that we learned in chapter 1. Overpopulation of any organism, like take, for example, our class. If we had overpopulation of period I, we would have limited resources, which would be what? Seeds. In this case, it's limited resource, could be food, predators, to maintain balance, all these things. And this leads to, eventually, if you have limited resources, what happens to you? You die. So algae starts to die. Now, because algae is an organic, is made up of organic compounds, it's a living thing, it is considered oxygen demanding waste. What happens to waste? It gets broken down. But in order to break down this waste, it requires oxygen demanding bacteria. So what's going to happen? The what? Correct. Because you have an algae bloom that dies, and you need oxygen demanding bacteria to break it down, levels of dissolved oxygen are going to go down, and then that leads to fish dying. So if there's a decrease in levels of dissolved oxygen, what's happening here that you see in the visual? Fish are dying. Okay, don't forget that. Fish need oxygen to breathe, so fish will die. And usually wherever there's high levels of eutrophication, fish will be floating around the top. What do you think the death of fish leads to? It's decomposing of other organisms, which obviously are going to let out an odor, which is going to cause more damage to the marine biome because you have decomposition of organic matter continuously going, right? So it leads to a big problem, which is why sometimes oceans can be closed. That's it. So you have an assignment today. You do not have to do